The projector light flickered across the glass wall, throwing my reflection over the slide my team lead was presenting. My slide. My code, my diagrams, my midnight notes turned into a pitch under someone else's voice. The irony hit sharp. The same man who once told me, document everything, was now standing there claiming he built it all. I kept my hand on the coffee mug that had long gone cold, its rim tasting like metal and regret. The conference room smelled faintly of burnt toner and lemon cleaner, and all I could think about was how the timestamp on that Git log was still sitting untouched in my drive. Proof that this wasn't his work. My name's Evan Miles, 32, back-end engineer at a mid-sized tech firm in Austin. We're not Google, but we like to act like we are. Open floor plan, bean bags, and an innovation wall full of post-it ideas that would never leave the whiteboard. I joined 3 years ago, mostly because I wanted a quiet place to build things that mattered. It started about 8 months back. The company was desperate to land a contract with a logistics startup that needed a custom route optimization system. Something smarter than Google Maps. Something that could predict driver patterns and road conditions. I'd been messing around with a personal project that did something similar, a hybrid of Dijkstra's algorithm and predictive clustering. When I showed it to my lead, Mark Trent, one Friday evening, he leaned forward, eyes bright behind his rectangular glasses. "You made this yourself?" he asked. "Yeah, just a personal prototype, Ivan," I said. "It's still rough, but it's learning faster with every data set." He gave me that nod, the one engineers give when they've just found gold. "You might be onto something, Evan. Let's talk about this on Monday." That Monday turned into Tuesday. Then a month passed. Then I saw my own repo cloned into our internal system under a new branch, Route AI Core V2 Trent. At first, I tried to convince myself it was a mistake. Maybe he was testing my code. Maybe it was internal benchmarking. But when I opened the branch, my comments were still there. The dumb jokes, the debugging notes written in lowercase, even the to-do, clean this garbage line from 3 a.m. My stomach turned cold. I didn't confront him right away. Mark was senior, 10 years older, and known for taking initiative that conveniently aligned with other people's hard work. People said he was a closer, someone who knew how to sell ideas upstairs. I was just the quiet guy who stayed late. The thing is, when you build something line by line, you know its fingerprints. You know every recursive loop, every weird fix you left in to keep it from breaking. That code was mine. Unmistakably mine. Still, I tried to stay calm. I downloaded the commit history, every push log, every timestamp, and backed it up to an external SSD at home, just in case. A few weeks later, the company announced a special presentation to pitch a new prototype to the execs. Guess whose name was on the invite as lead architect? Mark's. Mine wasn't even mentioned. That Friday morning, I sat at my desk early, pretending to debug something while my chest felt like someone had poured static through it. He strolled in wearing a navy blazer, something he never did, and patted my shoulder. "Evan, thanks for the groundwork," he said smoothly. "You'll get a mention when we go live." It wasn't just what he said. It was the way he said it, like he'd already planned this. When the meeting started, I sat in the back row, pretending to take notes while he clicked through my interface demo. My lines of code flashed on the screen as he spoke. This system predicts optimal delivery paths by analyzing driver patterns, weather, and traffic incidents in real time. I caught myself clenching my jaw so tight it hurt. The executives were nodding. One of them even said, "Brilliant work, Mark. This could save us millions." That was the moment I realized something. I wasn't just being stolen from. I was being erased. That weekend, I barely left my apartment. The blinds stayed down. The fridge hummed like an accusation. Every time I opened my laptop, I stared at those logs. The commit history, the timestamps, The version notes, each one with my name beside it. I scrolled through messages with my friend Ryan, another developer who'd quit the company a year ago. He was blunt. Dude, file an IP claim. You've got proof. Against my team lead, I typed back. He'd bury me. HR won't touch this. Then don't go to HR, he replied. Go to the truth. That line stuck with me. I wasn't sure what it meant yet, but it rattled around in my head all night. By Monday, Mark was walking around like a man with a promotion waiting to happen. The buzz in the office was that the execs were considering fast-tracking him for a Director of Innovation title if the project went well. He started assigning me busy work. Hey, Evan, can you refactor that legacy API? Evan, can you fix those client-side cache bugs? Every request was something designed to keep me away from Route AI Core V2 Trent. But I noticed something he didn't. The commit activity on that branch had slowed down. The demo had worked because it ran on a test data set, one I'd cleaned manually. He didn't have the deeper predictive model trained properly. He didn't even know how I'd integrated the dynamic clustering. Without me, the code would break in front of an audience. That's when I started planning. It began small. I created a private repo, Mirror Root AI Original, and started writing a detailed commit log of my own. Each entry had screenshots, timestamps, and cross-references to Slack messages where Mark had acknowledged seeing the prototype. I even recorded screen captures of me running the builds, complete with system time showing on my desktop. I wasn't trying to set him up. I just needed to protect myself. But deep down, I think I wanted him to slip, to fail publicly so the truth would force its way out. Then, 2 weeks later, my manager called me in. Evan, Mark says you've been acting withdrawn lately. Everything all right? I looked up. Withdrawn? I've been doing my job. She gave a polite smile. Well, he said you've been resistant to collaboration on the prototype. My pulse hit the floor. My prototype? Mark's project, she corrected quickly, eyes flicking down to her notes. Let's stay professional here. I realized then that he'd already rewritten the narrative. That night, I sat in my car in the office parking lot long after dark. The lot lights buzzed overhead, moths flitting through the halos. My laptop was open on the passenger seat, the Git logs glowing faintly against the dark interior. Line after line of evidence scrolled by. Commit 14F3E2B, implemented predictive cluster refinement. Author, Evan Miles. Date, 2 June 14, 021157, 2023. And then, weeks later, commit 15A92F1, merged route AI Core V2 Trent. Author, Mark Trent. Date, Weed Jewel 5, 10, 43, 22, 23. He'd merged my branch, left my name in the author logs, and still presented it as his. My hands shook so hard I almost dropped the laptop. I didn't sleep that night. I just kept scrolling, comparing, printing screenshots, saving backups to a cloud folder under a different name. By sunrise, my eyes felt like sandpaper, but I had everything I needed. A week later, the company scheduled a final review meeting with the full leadership team to greenlight the launch. That's when I made my decision. The morning of the meeting, I arrived early. My palms were sweaty, my heart beat a hammer in my ears. I had a flash drive in my pocket, my Git log archive, time-stamped, signed, and backed up on 2 separate servers. Mark walked in, all smiles. Ready to watch this thing take off? I forced a nod. Yeah. Been a long time coming. He laughed, like he didn't hear the edge in my voice. The meeting room filled with executives. Mark stood up front, clicking through the slides again, confident, smooth, charming. He had a line for every question. That's a great point, Lisa. We accounted for that edge case already. We're proud of the team effort here. Team effort. When the CTO asked about the predictive training process, Mark stammered slightly. Well, the model aggregates Actually, I said, surprising myself, the model doesn't aggregate. It weights historical anomaly patterns by variance threshold. That's why the last test failed. The room turned. Mark blinked. Evan, that's... Would you like me to show the commit logs? I asked quietly. The CTO leaned forward. Commit logs? Mark's face flushed pale. Evan, this isn't... I pulled the flash drive from my pocket and slid it across the table. Every line of code time-stamped, including the first push, 6 weeks before this project was even registered under Mark's name. The silence that followed wasn't loud. It was surgical. After the meeting, I didn't go back to my desk. I walked out of the building into the humid Austin air, every nerve in my body vibrating. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt numb. When I got to my car, I sat there, staring at my shaking hands. My phone buzzed. A message from Ryan. Well? He's done, I typed. They saw everything. I didn't hit send yet. I just stared at the words. Because the truth was, I didn't know what would happen next. HR could spin it. Legal could bury it. Or maybe, just maybe, someone would finally believe the quiet guy who stayed late. The metal door handle of the conference room was still warm from all the hands that had gripped it after I left. I pushed it open and stepped back inside hours later, once the crowd had thinned. The air was thick with the faint hum of the projector cooling down and the scent of burned circuits. Someone had left a half-drunk cup of coffee on the table, still steaming. For a second, I wondered if it belonged to Mark. The next 48 hours were chaos. HR sent me an email titled, Clarification Request, Root AI Project Ownership. Legal requested access to the repo. The CTO wanted to reopen the investigation. And Mark was silent. By Tuesday morning, my Slack icon had turned into a war zone. Messages poured in from teammates who hadn't said a word to me in months. Hey man, didn't know you built that whole thing yourself. Respect. You good? Things got weird after that meeting. Watch your back. Trent's talking to execs. I barely replied. I kept my head down, finishing bug tickets and pretending not to notice how people whispered near the kitchen. But beneath that silence, I could feel it. The company shifting, rebalancing itself around a new story. That afternoon, HR scheduled a joint discussion. Mark was CC'd. The subject line alone made my throat dry. When I entered the room, he was already there. Sleeves rolled up, face calm, pretending none of this had happened. The HR rep smiled awkwardly. Thanks for coming, both of you. We're just here to ensure alignment on the project's authorship before moving forward. Mark folded his hands. Of course. I could see the sheen of sweat at his temple. He was trying to stay composed. The HR rep looked at me. Evan, you presented some documentation. I slid a small stack of printed Git logs across the table. Timestamps, authorship history, local machine registry. You can verify the SHA fingerprints if needed. She nodded slowly. And Mark, your name appears on these later commits. Mark leaned back, exhaling through his nose. Look, Evan's a brilliant engineer, no question, but this project evolved as a team effort. I built on his groundwork, refined it for production. It's not theft, it's collaboration. He said that word, collaboration, like it was a shield. I stared at him, the kind of stare you give someone who's already rewritten the truth in their head. Mark, I said quietly, you renamed the repo after yourself. You removed my branch tags. He didn't blink. You went rogue. You pushed code outside protocol. I had to stabilize it. The HR rep's eyes flicked between us. All right, let's pause. Legal will review both sides before we take further action. Her tone said it all. They didn't want a scandal. They wanted containment. By the time I got home that night, the city felt different. Heavier, somehow. Austin lights shimmered on the river like broken code syntax. I ordered takeout I didn't eat and sat on my balcony, scrolling through the company's internal chat. Someone had leaked a screenshot, the Git log showing my first push, time-stamped weeks before the official project kickoff. It was spreading like wildfire. Comments piled beneath it. How's that for collaboration? Trent's toast. Classic upper management parasite. The next morning, Mark didn't show up. For a few days, things were quiet. Too quiet. HR sent vague, "we're assessing next steps" emails. The CTO called me in to discuss retention. "Evan," he said, adjusting his cufflinks, "you understand the company values integrity, right?" "Yeah," I said flatly. "And you understand that going public with internal documentation could jeopardize future partnerships." There it was, the threat behind the courtesy. "I didn't go public," I said. "Someone else leaked that." He nodded like he didn't believe me. "We just need to be careful. If this escalates, both your careers could take a hit." "Mine already did," I said. He didn't answer, just closed his folder and told me to take a few personal days. That weekend, I drove west. No destination, just out of the city. The highway stretched empty past fields and truck stops, and I kept thinking about Mark's calm face in that room, the way he twisted words until they sounded reasonable. By the time I hit the outskirts of Marble Falls, the sky had turned violet. I parked by the lake and sat there until the crickets started. I thought about all the little moments that led to this. The first late night I stayed debugging alone. The first time he said, "good work," and meant good job covering my workload. My phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. "Evan, they're investigating me. Let's talk." I stared at it for a long time, then typed back, "Tomorrow at the office." Monday, I arrived early again. Mark was waiting in the break room, sleeves rolled up, eyes hollow. He looked older, like someone who hadn't slept since Friday. He didn't waste time. "They're gonna fire me, Evan. You happy now?" I didn't answer. He leaned closer. "You think they'll promote you instead? They'll chew you up the same way they did me. You're just the next useful name." I sipped my coffee. "Then maybe it's time they remembered the names." He laughed, low and bitter. "You're naive. This company doesn't care who built what. They care about who sells it." He was right in a way. That's what made it worse. Later that day, HR called me in again. But this time, Mark wasn't there. The HR manager sat stiffly, a legal rep beside her. "Evan, after reviewing the documentation, we've concluded that your contributions were foundational and original. The company will be issuing a corrected authorship report and compensation adjustment." I blinked. "What about Mark?" The lawyer spoke instead. "Mark Trent has been terminated effective immediately." I felt nothing. No victory, no relief, just a quiet exhaustion. They asked me to sign a non-disclosure agreement about internal disputes in exchange for a sizable bonus. I stared at the paper for a full minute before signing. Because the truth, I didn't want revenge anymore. I wanted peace. But peace never lasts in tech. 2 weeks later, I got an email from a journalist. Subject line: "Need confirmation on internal whistleblower claim. Route AI project." I froze. Someone had leaked everything again. Not just the logs this time, but emails, meeting notes, Slack threads, the whole ugly story. The article went live 2 days later. Engineer exposes theft inside Austin tech startup. How innovation was stolen one commit at a time. The company's name was all over it. So was mine. Mark's LinkedIn disappeared within hours. The CEO issued a public statement about values and accountability. And for the first time, strangers were emailing me. Not recruiters, but students, freelancers, other engineers who'd been through the same thing. One message stuck out. A developer from Seattle wrote, "You don't know me, but your story made me keep my own proof this time. Thank you." I stared at that line until the screen dimmed. It was strange. I hadn't meant to start anything. I just wanted my name back. Still, I couldn't shake the guilt. Mark wasn't innocent, but I knew what it felt like to be crushed by corporate machinery. I'd seen it happen to better people. The day I cleared out my desk, I found a small post-it stuck under my keyboard. His handwriting, "Don't forget who you build for." I kept it, not out of sentiment, but as a warning. I left the company a month later. Took a job at a small AI startup downtown. Quieter, scrappier, built by people who actually wrote their own code. On my first day, I created a shared folder labeled Proof Logs. My new team laughed. "Paranoid much?" one of them asked. I smiled. "Just experienced." Every night, I still checked the commit timestamps before pushing updates. It wasn't fear anymore. It was habit. And yet sometimes, when I saw my reflection in the dark office window after hours, I'd remember that first presentation. The way Mark's voice filled the room with my work. The way the glass had mirrored me, watching him take credit. The difference now was simple. I wasn't invisible anymore. "Are you the guy who exposed CloudShift?" the recruiter asked over Zoom, smiling like it was small talk. I paused. I'd rather be known for the code than the scandal. He laughed politely. "Well, that scandal just made you famous." The camera light blinked on my laptop as I sat in my tiny new apartment, a stack of sealed cardboard boxes behind me. A new city, a new job, but the same question in every interview since the article. Was I the whistleblower? The truth was complicated. I never wanted to be a symbol. But the story had taken on a life of its own. The quiet engineer who took down his boss. Reporters loved that line. The day the article went live, my inbox exploded. Half the messages were from journalists, the other half from angry ex-coworkers who claimed I'd ruined the company. Someone even made a Reddit post about me titled, "Guy Outs His Boss Using Git Logs." Absolute legend. I didn't reply to any of it. But deep down, I was terrified. Because behind every cheer was a whisper. What if the next company sees me as a liability? My new employer, Driftcore, was a small AI consultancy. 20 people, all remote, mostly former startup refugees. My direct manager, Lena, was calm, deliberate, the kind of person who read every line of an email twice before responding. On my first day, she sent me a single message. "We read about you. We're not scared. Just build good things." That line grounded me more than anything else could. For the next 6 months, I did exactly that. I wrote clean code, documented everything, contributed without trying to prove anything. Driftcore was the opposite of CloudShift. No ego, no innovation theater, just work that mattered. But the past has a way of circling back. One rainy Thursday, while debugging a data stream, I got a LinkedIn message from a name I hadn't seen in almost a year. Mark Trent. "Evan, I know you don't owe me anything, but can we talk?" I stared at the screen, pulse thudding in my neck. The audacity almost made me laugh. I typed, deleted, retyped. About what? Closure, please. Something in that word, closure, felt off. Still, I agreed. Maybe I needed it too. We met at a coffee shop off Lamar, the kind of place where the Wi-Fi password was written on a chalkboard. He was already there, thinner, hair graying at the temples, wearing the same blazer from that infamous presentation. He didn't look like a villain. He looked like a man who'd been hollowed out by his own ambition. "I got blacklisted," he said, before I could even sit. "Every interview ends the same way. They Google me." I nodded. I know the feeling. He looked up sharply. You came out the hero." Heroes don't get anxiety opening their inbox, I said quietly. They just get more cautious. He chuckled bitterly. So what now? You win, I lose? I took a sip of coffee. There was never supposed to be a game. He leaned forward. Then why leak it? I didn't. He studied my face, maybe realizing finally that I hadn't needed to. The truth had leaked itself the moment he'd signed my code with his name. When I left, the rain had started again. My car windshield was a blur of streetlight reflections. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Not because he'd lost his job, but because he'd built his entire career on pretending to be smarter than the people who actually were. The irony was that he was smart, just too impatient to let the work speak for him. A few months later, the fallout finally ended. CloudShift rebranded under a new name, new logo, new values. The industry moved on, as it always does. But something unexpected happened. People started calling me for consulting gigs, small startups wanting advice on documentation integrity. I didn't realize it then, but that was the seed of something new. I built a side project, a public Git monitor that automatically timestamps and hashes every commit on the blockchain, immutable and verifiable. I called it ProofStack. It started as therapy. Then it became a product. By the time the first client paid for it, I realized I'd accidentally built my own company. One night, after too many hours at the keyboard, I found myself looking at an old folder. The archived Mirror Root AI original. The files hadn't been opened since I left CloudShift. I hovered over Delete, but I didn't click it. Instead, I zipped it, renamed it First Lesson Zip, and stored it in the same secure vault where ProofStack's core lived. Not as a wound, as a reminder. Sometimes people ask if I regret what happened, if I'd undo it all to keep my peace. I used to think about that a lot. But the truth? That confrontation in the glass-walled room didn't destroy me. It clarified me. It made me realize that silence doesn't protect you. It only edits you out of your own story. Now, when I mentor junior developers, I tell them the same thing Ryan once told me. Don't go to HR, go to the truth. And if the truth needs proof, make sure it's timestamped. A few weeks ago, I got a letter. An actual paper letter, not an email. No return address. Just one line inside, written in neat handwriting. You were right to build for the truth. No signature. But I knew who it was from. I folded it carefully and slid it next to that Post-it I'd kept from the old office. The two notes side by side looked like opposite ends of a story. The man who stole and the man who learned. And somewhere between them, maybe, was me. If this story moved you, subscribe for more real-life confessions and emotional journeys like this one.